welcome to the Craft Nerd. So today I'm going to show you all around my studio and take you through all the nooks and crannies that people don't normally get to see, and show you my bead collection and all of that. So I hope you enjoy it. This is my little digital scales that I use for when I post things. Just got these little drawers over here, sort of keep just little cards or stationary things in there. Back here I've got Swarovski crystals. Behind those are a couple of little paintings that I did ages ago. They're sort of hidden, I guess, but and I've got coloured rubber bands that are used to tie up bundles of beads or anything like that. A few little bags and things, a label punch. Up the top, now I love this candle. This is a candle holder. I don't have a candle in it at the moment, but the candle sits in the back and it lights up. The light comes through all the little windows of the little fairy village. I got that years and years ago now, in New South Wales, I think. I don't know if you can see that very well. Here, this is one of the trophies that I got from the Swarovski Create Your Style beading competition. It's really cool with the crystals on the top. I won a whole host of Swarovski crystals as well, which was pretty cool. I've got some necklaces on display. I'll zoom in actually. So this one's sort of a steampunk one on lace, purple and like gold and copper sort of colours. This one is just basically almost all Swarovski crystals. A few seed beads, but only sort of accent beads, but yeah, lots of crystals. Looks really cool on. I could sort of picture eventually a burlesque dancer or something like that, someone wearing a piece like that. This one is kind of cool. Like, can't see the back part from here, but I've got all these sort of beaded beads that look like stars. I called it constellation, so it's you know, all sorts of stars and things like that, and it looks like sort of the colours of the universe of the Milky Way or what have you in there. Freeform beadwork mainly, and then beaded beads. It's another trophy I won from another Create Your Style competition. And my little wizard guy. I love wizards and dragons and anything sort of mythical. So just have them on display, kind of like that. Down over next to this I have, I love putting some time into my costumes for our work Christmas party. So this last one I was Maleficent. And the tutorial for this I actually got on YouTube. It's just using duct tape. I didn't have a lot of time to create the headdress, but it came out really good. You know, I only needed it for that one night, and I thought I'd put it on display anyway. And I've got this kind of cool head and shoulders bust that I used just to display jewellery and things. I actually got that to display a neck corset that I made, but then I ended up getting a half body bust, which I'll show you in a minute. This is just some drawers. I use these for like photography sometimes, you know, just as backdrops because they're neutral colours. In here, get that out of the way. So in here I have stiff stuff, lacy stiff stuff that I've dyed. I've got silk fusion pieces, because you can sort of create almost like material, I guess. Some people call it silk paper. Mine's probably a bit thick to be sort of a paper, but I make it about the same thickness as a beading foundation usually, and then I can bead over the top of it, or I might make it into designs. So there's that. There's material down there too. Excess bead mats, some netting that I use for when I do the silk fusion. And down the bottom, mainly hair accessory pieces when I make hair accessories, like combs and clips and things, but there's a few bracelet pieces and stuff that I haven't played around with yet. So I've got those. Before I show you the wool and everything, I'll show you this. I made I wanted really cool fairy lights for my studio, so I decided to make it. I mean, I bought the purple fairy lights obviously, but the pieces on top of it, the little butterflies and flowers and everything, are made of lace and beaded. I've forgotten how many pieces it was, but it was a ton of work to get that put together. I really love it though, so I'm glad I did it. I don't often make things that extravagant, I guess, for myself, but I really wanted to do something special for the studio, because we haven't been in this house that long yet, and I was really trying to make the studio a really inspirational sort of place, and I really love my studio. There's a few things I'd like to still do to it, but yeah, so there's that. Quite a lovely view. I made a sign there too. You can see that's just printed from my printer and pieced together. You can use Adobe to print off posters, and it marks out where you need to cut so that you can print multiple pieces and put them together. So I did that to do that, and then lovely view out there. I'll come back to this part though, and we'll make our way around. So this is just little cute bags and stuff, and this little cool rose hanging thing. I put these in recently, some hooks that I got from Bunnings. They're only like $17 for each rack. There's 2 racks, one for each door, and hanging. I've got the wool up the top, and then hanging wool and silk tops. So the silk, I've got some silk here. I think I've got some more back here. A few silk pieces. I use obviously for silk fusion and jewelry and things. The wool I've started using and making. I've made a few bags, scarves. I've made a few belts as well. I haven't posted those anywhere yet. And yeah, really enjoy felting. It's a really lovely process, and I love the look of felted everything, really. Felted clothes and crafts and things. Some just really cool colours, and I love them all hanging here because it's just very inspirational to see all the colour. Yeah, vibrant, beautiful colours. I've got wool. This side's mainly lace. Like this is dyed lace that I got, I think from eBay actually, a very long time ago. Really pretty pieces of lace. Sometimes I'll clip pieces out if I want to use just a flower, or I might use a whole piece. Got some really nice ribbon that I got. I think that was from the Stitches and Craft show last year. Black place. That one's really nice. Looks really cool, especially if you put, you know, coloured, different colour, contrasting colour behind it, and it shows up all the design. I love this stuff. It's just metallic, like a metallic ribbon, but it's just shaded colours, you know, all different sort of rich jewelly tone colours. And I like using fibres and things in a lot of my work, just to add something different, layer of interest. A 3D element. I've always sort of enjoyed 3D elements in my work. This is a red, this is a elasticy one. This stuff's really cool. It's not quite leather, I'm not really sure what it's made of, but it's just kind of embossed. Almost looks like leather, printed leather or something, but it's not leather. I think it's like faux leather. This is silk. This one here. Beautiful colours. Silk yarns. Really cool texture. And sort of shaded sort of autumn tones, greens, oranges, reds, browns in there. And oh, this stuff's really cool. Jewel tone wool. They work well in felting as well, so but yeah, I've used this sort of stuff behind beadwork just to give that three-dimensional look to things. So yeah, I love all that stuff. In here, this is a cupboard, so it's not as neat in here, but I'll show you anyway. So put these shelves in here. They weren't in the cupboard before. It was just built to be like a hanging shelf, as you can see with the bar there, but I needed something to organise my stuff, so I got these shelves and put the plastic drawers on there, which are handy. Got some plastic tubs of stuff. I won't pull those out this time, maybe in another video. Packaging for my business, you know, for my jewellery and stuff like that. I decorate them all. Oops. Oh, bit of a drop those. So you can see I use that stamp and embossing powder to put my logo on it, and then glitter and everything like that, just to make it look really old worldy and magical and everything. So made a mess already, sorry for that. Paints up the top. I used to do fine arts. I majored in sculpture and printmaking, which probably explains why I really like things to be three-dimensional when I do my beadwork. I've had to really put the painting on hold because I just didn't have time to do everything, but I've kept my paints and occasionally I will pull them out. It's not focusing now for some reason. Why aren't you focusing? There we go. Yeah, so I don't do any painting anymore. Very rarely do any painting, just because I just don't have time, but I do love it still. Don't use that very often, to be honest, but that's good for stringing, if you do a lot of stringing, just to sit all the beads next to each other. I did PMC and did a workshop on how to make rings. In fact, I'm wearing a ring that I made myself. I can't point to the one that it is, but it's one of these rings. My other hand's holding the camera. Box of paints. This stuff's really cool. I use that for, it's a rust paint, so it's a 3-step process, and it puts, I think it's iron filings it uses, and then, so it actually is real rust that it creates on things. Looks very, very cool. Leaves and flowers and things. Little fascinators. I've made a few fascinators. I'd like to make some more fascinators, actually. This is for my gas burner for when I do PMC, or I've used it for silver if I'm wanting to sort of melt the end of a piece of silver just to create a little ball shape on like a head pin or something. This is for embroidery work. I worked with a fashion designer for a little while and did beadwork for her. There's all sorts of bits and pieces. I did try and make some sense of this the other day, but still needs work. What do I have in here? I've got shells. This is different, like little things for clay work, PNC and stuff. A little roller for PMC mainly, but you could use it for polymer clay as well. Zip ties. You can use these instead of actual boning. I did buy proper boning, but when I made my first practice neck corset, I used this because I didn't want to waste good boning. All sorts of other things. I won't go into that too much at the moment. I use these when I do felting. I've got a heat gun for embossing. This is stuff for polishing silver, like the glove, silver glove. That was black tape that I used for that headdress that I made. And some other bits and pieces for PMC work in there. The sander that I use for felting, I won't go into what that's all about. I know not everyone uses a sander for felting, but I'll tell you, if you haven't, you should. It's so much easier. The tutorial that I got for felting called for it, and it's fantastic. That's a heat-proof mat back there for PMC, and just some tubes. This is just plastic bags. So that's all of that. Now, I love this. So this is that half body bust thing. Wearing the finished neck corset. So I wanted it to look like armour, like a neck corset that was sort of like armour. And the idea was to put roses and thorns, and it's called Thorn. And me being me, I always like to push the envelope. So I was entering a floral category of the Bead and Button Bead Dreams show. And I thought, well, everyone thinks of floral as ultra girly, and it can be a little nannerish and stuff like that. And I thought, no, I really want something that's, you know, kick-ass and, you know, feminine but wild as well. So that's Thorn. That's up on my Etsy shop with some, you know, photos of what it looks like. But I'll zoom in a little bit here and you can see I used the rust paint on those spikes. So it's the thorns of the rose, and then wire mesh roses all over it. Does up there. It's nice and loose fitting as well on the neck, because who wants to be choked? And the wings, of course, that was part of my Maleficent costume, but I thought it looked cool on the bust. This is also, I made this for my Maleficent costume. There used to be a plastic wine cup actually at the end there, and it turns on. Where's the thing? I put fairy lights in there, so it lights up, and I had tubing that I hot glued on it to make it look like sort of withered old piece of wood, and little sparkles and things like that. And yeah, pretty cool. I was pretty happy with that. I'd never made anything like that before, so you know, maybe I'll even make some more things like that. I thought it came out pretty well, so I'll shut this door. That's a painting I did. It's based on a Brian Froud picture. He's like my favourite artist ever. And I used to always practice painting and drawing with his work, and it's nowhere near as good as his, but I still like the way the wings came out. It's sort of his wings that he did looked sort of like that anyway, but so that one there, little group of little pink sparkly fairies. Then over here we've got dragon and wizard, candle holder. This is cool. Got this at Ishka for $20. It was for another Christmas party, and I thought it looked pretty cool anyway, so I hung it up. It was a pirate. Oh no, it wasn't a pirate one. It was a dress up as a rock and roll star, and I thought, oh well, that looked pretty cool, like the guitar. It's obviously a pirate guitar, but it looks really cool anyway. This is another painting I did based on a Brian Froud picture. That one's it's a mixture of watercolour and acrylic on a piece of watercolour paper. Mounted up there. I've got this little, you know, first started getting into some of the beadwork stuff. I did a class on how to make these little flowers, but then I added all sorts of things, like this little centre part wasn't part of it. The leaf and the stem wasn't part of it. I had never done beadwork like this before, so it's really poorly done, and I used the wrong thread and it's falling apart. But it's one of those things that I could fix it, but it's kind of sentimental that's sort of how I created it at the time when I was starting out, so it's just more sentimental piece. I love this. This looks really cool as well. It's got a little unicorn and a wizard. That sort of laser sparkly thing. This is another one of my pieces. This is very steampunk. It's really, well, it wasn't actually my first steampunk, technically speaking, but I did make one that on reflection is steampunk, but this was the first one where I was sort of aware of steampunk and what it was about, and more in line with steampunk. So I got a vintage clock face and kind of aged it, which I'm sure people who are into clocks and stuff probably think is terrible, because it wasn't the cheapest vintage clock face either. So, but I really wanted certain look to it, so I got a really nice one. I've got the wire work. I love doing wire work above my embroidery work, if you can see. The back is nice and smooth, though I'm always very careful that I hide it. Like, you'll never feel that there was wire work in there. It's smooth as a baby's butt. And that one's just, again, filled with Swarovskis. Lots and lots and lots of Swarovski crystals. You can't really get a good look at the colour. It's a bit dark in here at the moment. Reds and greens, like rich tones on that one. Coming over here, I have a little tray of like extra things for felting. So things that I couldn't hang up on my hooks. It's like, I can't remember what they call those things, but they're just to add texture and everything to your felting. You know, Throstis waist. I think that was a silk cap. I have the cocoon little, just pull one out so you can see. If you've ever done felting, you're probably very familiar with this stuff. So it's really interesting textures. I'm trying to pull it out, it's all sticking together, but yeah, just really cool textures, and I love, very interested in textiles and textures and stuff in my work, so and using unusual sort of materials in my work and stuff like that. Oh, these are bits, offcuts of ultra suede, which I use for the backing of my work. Some more like threads and things. The blue flowers and lime milkshakes, that was my first official collection. That was in honour of my dad, who passed away. He passed away right before Father's Day, 2 months before my wedding actually. Complications with his lungs really, and so I wanted to dedicate a full collection to him, and blue flowers and lime milkshakes are both things that he loved that not everyone knew about him, so it was a really special, close to my heart. So I've kept that sign up there. I made that, you know, when I went to the markets with it and everything, and yeah, it's very special to me. Of course, I did have people on the day asking why everything was blue and green. That's why it was blue and green. There's a mask that I made. Again, that was a Christmas party. I made that from silk and formed it to the shape before it set, and put the feathers and everything on it. It's got a stick there that you can sort of see the stick that I held it on with crystals and ribbons hanging down. So yeah, I really like that. This board I've put up as a way to sort of pin work that I'm halfway through finishing, or I've glued pieces down, and it's been good actually. I've only just put this up recently, but it reminds me to do this work instead of starting something new, because some of these pieces, I am embarrassed to say, have been glued up ready to go for years, and I've not touched them.